I'm in brain off.
It's okay.
It's good.
Sorry.
Good call.
Good eats. Good folio work. We are being recorded.
I'm just sharing the message to the volunteers in our channel. I actually just did it in a Google Doc because it was easier. You know, I was going to get too...
Sure.
It was, yeah. Well, I'll open it up and share it when we get the chance to discuss that. Caroline, where your sleeves are? Is it hot?
I've been,
It's like 80
I have
degrees
to
here.
go mow the field today. So I was out
As you do.
mowing, then the battery died.
Life.
Yeah.
The black flies.
How long does the battery last on your mower usually? I've only used the corded
It
ones
used
before.
to last a nice long time, and then the last few years, I take them out. You know, I have a brush mower. It's not just a regular lawnmower, and I bring it in the winter so it doesn't freeze. And I had two, and they're both dead. I usually put them on a trickle charger, but somebody decorated for Christmas or Thanksgiving and tucked the trickle charger away. I got one battery. I jump started this morning and that worked, and now there's nothing. So it's on the trickle charger now. Oh, look at Kate!
Hey, I am liking the vibe.
It's been a stressful couple days, so.
Like casual Friday.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that it's not even a fake background, that you're literally,
No,
that's
I'm just
literally
outside.
you.
Yeah, no, it's been a couple days. It's been a couple of days, so no, I'm not going back inside.
That's good.
Yeah.
So my computer
Props.
dies. I get a few
Like,
hours.
work's not done, but I am. Like, that's like a Friday mood. Like,
Well, why
I
don't
work from the outside?
why don't we try to do a stand-up, and then we can move to casual Friday / larger discussion.
Okay.
All right.
Do those conflict with each other? I'm wondering. We'll see.
Oh,
We will see.
word.
It means we'll be dressed like Kate while we have the conversation.
we all have
Yeah.
to switch. You know that TikTok where it's like flip, flip, and then you
Yeah.
flip the switch?
I know. Should I be dressed more professionally?
Yeah, Kate, where's your suit? Where's
I've
your
been doing
pantsuit,
video
Kate?
interviews, and there's like a fraction of people who like dress up for the interview and a fraction who do not.
Hmm.
I think
So
I
I'm
would dress
dreading
up.
when court.
Some their end rather than
Oh,
your
yeah.
end, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I don't dress up for the interviews.
But what I'm saying
have-
is, it's better for the world, for people who are being interviewed, to just make those rules rather than the interviewers. You know.
Yeah.
I understand that in a way, because, you know, when I was in college, there'd be these mostly engineers, you know, but they would like not shower, and they were so gross when they came into exams. You know, it's like pulling all these all-nighters. I like to be clean and organized when I have an exam. I mean, not dressed up in a suit, but you know, it's really about the feel, isn't it?
You would have done so well in UCD. Okay, so as interesting as the engineering shower habits is, I think we say that for Casual Friday. And for now, we talk about where everybody's at and what's going on. I have specific questions that I'm not sure will be for a stand-up. They're for like TRO related things that I don't know. You know, it's about the PDF and what should actually be filled in. And I think the person to go to is Quentin, but I'm acutely aware of the fact that you said that we need to find other people to go to at this stage, because everything will be going.
Well, we at least need to find other people to go to for certain things, right? I think we should keep Quentin for what we need Quentin for, and other people can go, and we can take other people elsewhere,
Michelle, are you getting to the
including
point
me.
where
Including me. What?
I guess I was asking that. Are you getting to the point where you're, you know, spread too thin?
A little bit, but I think I can survive. I think I'll, you know, when something's too much, I'll just go, that's not a thing I can do right now, right?
Okay, all right, all right.
So, I think it'll be okay. I just, it also, it's, for me, it's more a matter of like, what is the priority? And then the other things just won't get done. Like, so,
Yeah.
but I'm, if I need the breaks, I take them. That's what I generally do. I just go, I'm not going to be available between this time and that time, or I put stuff on snooze and go because I get tired, and then that's what you can do.
So
maybe an update from that I included in the Slack, but so we're ready to sign. We're just now trying to figure out how in the heck we're going to sign the darn document. And we're ready to sign. The point is either within a couple of emails back and forth or a posted paper document to get wet signatures. I anticipate have a signature very soon. I think given how hard it's being, it probably will not be until Tuesday at the very earliest. But we're at that stage. So I think this should be let's have the MVP for the TRO ready. And then everything else is after that.
My questions are directly related to the MVP for the TRO, and I think directly related to Quentin's, because Quentin programmed. It's just two questions I have about the actual form itself and how it's filling out. Just to give you a brief overview, one, the unit doesn't seem to be pulling through when you put a unit in. I don't know where the unit goes.
Quentin just fixed that.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. And then the other one is that the cell and are those going to show up regardless of, they're going to show up even if there's no numbers inputted?
You should be on a version of the branch where that isn't happening. Are you going to the?
I'm going to the updated link. But okay, anyway, that was okay. I was just looking at that because I was doing the TRO forms for the expected outcome.
No, but if it's not showing, if you're on the right branch and they're still showing up, then it's a problem.
Okay. So, yeah, those are two bugs that I fixed a couple days ago. So they should be in the master branch now.
Okay. Well, let's just figure that out now. And if we need to do a screen share or throw some links back and forth, let's just get clarity.
So
can you
just show us where?
Do we have a Trello card? I mean, sort of process big picture where we can always post the most recent. We could keep that card.
It's not that simple. It's not that simple because it depends who you mean. Different people have different kinds of the most recent branch. The most recent.
So for example, for testing, because that's the one that you're going to have the most people know.
Well, it depends if you're testing the TRO or the TRO.
Well, that's what I mean. So it would make sense if you, especially when you get to the point where you're having lots of people testing, that you have whatever. We're not never going to have 50 forms.
This is what we are working on, but like we are updating links.
So I'm just sharing.
No, that's not the correct link.
So I got it from here. Is that not the right place to have gotten it?
No. So the correct link is right now in the to-do list. And remember, we needed to update all the PDF, all the spreadsheets, and they need updating because they don't match the one that is going to be the most consistent source. But I have a different.
So then I'm just thinking. I'm thinking, why are we putting links in everything where we're going to have to keep updating them? Should we not have a central?
So that's something I wanted to discuss. Yeah. Is that we should have it should be either in the scenario page or in a separate document that just has all the links to all
can you not have those links in those Google Docs, but have them be like if not a Word document, if you're in a spreadsheet, and you can have the cell equal the cell of the spread. It's like you have a master wherever you're going to keep your link.
But then we have to pull in from other spreadsheets, and then when you delete that spreadsheet because of something or other or an accident, then it becomes an issue. So I think we should just have one central location where people can go to get the links, and I think it should be in the test running instructions, ideally.
Okay.
And we will discuss where's the best place to put them, but I think it should be one location.
Yeah, I think
I
having to
concur.
go back through and checking and re-changing all these links when they change is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I think we should go through and delete the links and say, check this document.
Yeah, have
Okay.
one link to go to the document. Everywhere there is, just go to the document.
Okay, well then that's my issue sorted, and we've
Perfect.
decided on a better process for that. And then we basically envisaging that the MOU gets signed, or there's some signature on Tuesday, a wet signature on Tuesday.
It might be a wet signature on Tuesday and then mailing. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but we are at the point where we have expressed the readiness to sign.
And now, and that what that means for us practically is that is there something that someone just presses and it goes live? What, like, basically
Yeah, so
the second that we
I
get
mean,
that
ultimately,
signed,
yes.
there are two things that happen. One, right now on the mass access site, there's a big thing that says, this is not live, don't pay
Yeah.
attention to us. That disappears. And then the other thing is that the link that there's Quentin set up an alias for the TRO, which is what's on the mass access page now. I think it points to the thing on the production server. And so he just needs to then update that alias to point to whatever the production version is. So I guess we have to push things to production and then make sure it's pointing at it.
what's an alias?
Oh, just like a
Quentin is like
It's too nice outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to update the link. We just have to install the new package on there.
Okay, so it's already it's already pointing to
Yeah,
the right
it's
spot.
pointing to the right place once we install the right package.
Okay, so but essentially what I'm saying is that the second that we get the go ahead that we can launch this, I don't want to have something that people are now like, oh, we need to do this, or you know what I mean. What still needs to be done to get
one
it
thing-
where,
That is the perpetual discussion.
you just muted yourself.
Nope,
Continue.
just muted.
Yep, you're back.
The one thing we need to do is actually have a court that can participate with
Yes,
us to
we
do a
do have
test.
Okay.
Because I don't want to assume that works until we've tested
Yes.
it with the court.
And I was told that I would get one later today.
Caroline, what's up? You're like,
We'll see.
okay. Later today. Fingers crossed.
Yes, well, I had made the request a week or so ago, but
Okay. Right. So then I'll do the expected outcome PDFs. I just wanted to check those two things. Otherwise, I'm confident that I know how they're supposed to be filled in. And maybe I'll do 3 and then just run them past somebody who knows how they're supposed to be filled in based on the scenarios.
I mean, who is that person? That's the question. That's the question
I'm
I've been
looking at
asking.
Quentin. You can't tell, but I'm
Okay.
who else
so what's
do we have in
the
TR?
question
Who
about
we
What is the
have
question?
The question is, we wanted to do expected outcome PDFs so that people can compare what gets produced with what should be produced. So we basically need somebody in housing who we can say to, this is the scenario, this person got locked out, this is the person, is this completed in the correct way? I don't even, I'm so confident in how it should be filled out. There's basically issue relief and then the names of the parties and maybe something that,
Yeah, I think that should be pretty straightforward.
Right.
I think if we wanted to pull in another person who's familiar with the forms, then maybe Laura Kamara would be someone we could reach out
Okay.
to again. I think she'd
Okay.
probably be available for that.
yeah, because I mean, it really is a simple form. It's not like the 209A where I would feel very out of my league putting stuff in. I mean, this is checking some boxes, filling in some information,
Exact
issue and relief.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly mirroring what you enter on the
yeah,
screen.
what you enter.
Yeah. So maybe I can can I produce 3 expected outcome PDFs and just, I mean, I know it's Memorial Day weekend, but like, who would be able to just double check my work? Because
If you just want
I
someone to
feel,
double check the work, I can just double check the work.
thank you, David. Okay, done. Right, next topic. 209A?
It's getting closer. So I should have postponed some of the changes that we were doing. I think they seem really critical, but it's derailed things a little. So I can't put in fixes for other things very easily right now. But I think if not the end of the day, I'll take some time tomorrow and get things back to a fully working state so everything is filled in. then we'll keep working through our punch list. We had a number of issues that were raised in testing that I think are worth us fixing.
And to be clear, the changes you are making, this is a big, we got to be clear on, are not on the link that we shared previously with people? Or
Correct.
They
are not.
Okay, good.
Because
that has been shared with other people as well, and I wanted to make sure it didn't break on them. So because we shared that with the Northeastern folks, and asked them to do a similar bit, but we did it subsequent to the focus group. So we said, here's this. We know the affidavit of care is trouble. So we're trying to work on that, but we'd like your other feedback.
Yeah, I think that should still be right. I mean, we're going to catch some of the other issues that we realized needed to be done and that have already been reported, but that's not the end of the world to have the same issue reported 3 or 4 times even.
Where is the feedback from Northeastern coming to?
Well, it's going to come to me because it's coming from one person there right now. Ideally, what will happen is once we have the next version, we'll loop people in to actually give it out to their folks and get feedback. But at that point, I would like us to be at the what we're going to call the private beta stage, which is to say, give it out to your folks and they can start using it to fill forms out if they want, because it's not like they can accidentally send them to the court.
Right.
And they can review them, and they should review them before they do anything with them. But basically something that's good enough that we can give it to someone and say, hey, you can use this to help you out, and then tell us what worked and what didn't work. But hopefully it's at a state that when they do that, they won't do it once and be like, I don't want to ever do this again. The point is it should give a little value add to them.
Right.
And
Laura, sorry.
Oh yeah,
Laura was asking me when we thought it would be ready to share with the Safe Plan advocates at least, and I wasn't quite sure what to.
If this is we might get echoes and thing, I probably should have CC'd, or she should have CC'd. She talked to me yesterday, said she had asked you that.
Okay, that was definitely since that.
Yeah, I told her that the link that we shared with the folks, that could be shared with the brass at Safe Plan.
Okay.
But that we weren't yet ready to share it with everyone. Okay. So the idea was it could be shared with the brass to get their general feedback. Then once we have a stable private beta, then that's when it could go out to everyone.
Cool.
Does that sound
and
like
what
everybody?
did you think? Kate might have the best idea of like whether we think that that's what we already had, minus some changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the things that like seemed the most essential were a couple of the fields that were populating incorrectly. Like that seems like, and I think you have fixed that. I don't know if they've been, because we want the fields. I assume that's stuff that really should be fixed.
Right.
And I think just from looking at the GitHub issues, it seemed like you had closed a lot of them. I just don't know if they're actually in the current link.
Those would not be in the link that was distributed before. Yeah, that was my mistake for where I making changes right now. But I think it's definitely going to be done by Monday.
Okay.
It should be done by the end of today. I'm making progress with the big changes. It's almost done.
I can try to glance through the GitHub list and see if there's anything that hasn't been closed that seems like absolutely essential. If there's any more of those field issues or anything else that's like really, really must be. I think you got them all that I noticed.
I at least did the showstoppers, but again, those are just on the branch that I'm working in now, which has problems with affidavit of care and custody that are not quite resolved yet.
And once we get to what we're calling the private beta, once we feel comfortable enough to share it with advocates and let them start testing it in the real world, as it were, right? Not giving it out to TV victims, but unless they're getting them to sign it, then I think we're in a really good space. And then politically, we want to, Laura and I will figure out exactly what she thinks makes sense. But I want to get to the space where we can give it out, advocates can be using it. We can have some metrics on it having been used a couple times in a couple courts. And then we can expand to other DV advocate programs. And then that's when after they've actually used it to create some forms that have then been filed with the court, and the court hasn't said anything like boo, right? Because they're not going to know where they come from. They're just going to come, right? So the point is we can say, hey, you know what? You're already accepting these forms. And especially in the advocate. So everything's about phased opening, right? So I think the plan here, and this is something Laura and I will talk more about because we're trying to figure out how to convince the court, is that we'll get it into a bunch of advocates' hands. The great thing there is they can start using it, so it's helping people. And then the first ask will probably be like, okay, you're already accepting these. Can we just turn it on so they can email it directly to you, right? And keep it with the advocates. And then we do that. And then we get more advocates using it, and then we see where we can go from there.
And you'll know from the advocates which courts they submitted the forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also that the forms ask for the court on them at all?
Oh yeah, of course. Is that working? Is the right court working for 209A now?
Well, it doesn't do the thing
Automatic.
that it's not supposed to
Yeah,
do.
you have to choose one.
No, I
You
don't
could
mean
just choose
mailing
one.
it. I'm saying helping people figure out which courts that they can
No,
file.
Probably doesn't-
Oh, that
yeah.
There's
doesn't
no
work.
validation on it right now. So we had I think it had been pretty well thought out, the validation for the old selector that made you choose from like 5 different fields and write in which division. We don't have that validation on the new court selector.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't stop you from filing other than probate and family if you want visitation, for example. That's the
But
main
again,
issue, right?
Yeah, but again, these are advocates who will be filling out these
Yeah,
forms.
I was just Oh, that's right. Of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Real quick on the TRO, I forgot to mention, and I don't know if anybody cares, and this is the MVP, I realize.
Michelle, we do care, but
all right,
we might
no, I
put a
don't
pin
mean
in
care.
it. And,
I mean,
yeah.
no, that's not what I mean. Sorry, I
Okay.
misspeak all the time. I totally don't mean don't care. I know you totally care, but I just mean for the MVP specifically. I'm just saying
Okay.
it's not. Okay, sorry. I hyperbole way too much. So the check boxes are really tiny on the TRO. Like I was trying to find the box that was supposed to be checked, and I was like, oh, it is checked. Okay.
Oh. Mm.
It does look a little unprofessional, and I think it would be really easy for someone to go through with an editor and just do the same thing we did with the other fields.
Like the 209A?
Yes, like the 209A.
Okay, well, I can do that.
If someone has time to do that, that's great.
It can happen in parallel to what you're doing. It doesn't have to interfere with anything.
So just to refresh, what happens is I download the one on GitHub, make it all follow the standard conventions that we have in terms of sizing and fonts and all that kind of stuff, and then upload it to GitHub to a different branch of that.
Which is on master now. So the latest code is on master. So it can just be a new branch.
Okay, just a new branch, and then do a pull request to say this is the revised.
To master. Yep.
Okay. I will do that.
Yeah, there's another weird thing with the checkboxes, which is in the editor that I use, the ones on the second page look fine.
Big,
but when I print it, or when I view it again later, like the bottom one is weirdly small. I don't understand where the difference is there. It's very weird. But you might check out all of the checkboxes just to see if they're formatted and look right, both on screen and when they're filled out. I don't know why there'd be a difference, but there seemed to be.
So needing to print them just to check what they look like printed.
Oh, not literally printing it on sorry, I shouldn't have said hard copy. In my browser, when it was filled in, it looked different than it did in the Adobe Acrobat that I had on my computer downloaded.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Right,
and that might just be between Firefox versus Acrobat. But I'm not sure.
I'll do that. And so what's the time now? It's almost 1. So
Could Melanie just do it? Because she's done it before.
Is she available?
I don't know, but I could at her.
I would be careful about one thing, which is the court name field. I think in general, we have to be very careful about making that be like whatever size font we chose, because the BMCs have very long names and they don't fit there if they aren't auto-sized.
Is BMC like the
text?
housing?
It's the text that's gigantic that's more unprofessional looking, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Housing court family session is like really difficult to fit in there as well. Like that font goes really small.
Which one? Oh, the different sittings for the housing courts.
Yeah, that also is really really small on the PDF.
Yeah, so it may not be important to include that information. So we might go back and change that later, but I think for now it's best to not cut it off, and then we can have that be something that we deal with in a week or two to figure out. Because there are a lot of things that depend on that name being exactly the same way it is right now.
Yeah.
So we
I
can't just change the name.
Okay.
I just want to speak against myself for a sec and flag the fact that as long as we consider this important for the MVP, right? Like if this is for the MVP, we should do it now. If it's not, then we should hold off.
I think it's a balance based upon whether or not someone has the time. If no one has the time, then it's not important. So it's not a deal breaker. But if it's only a short amount of time, like, you can do it in 5 to 10 minutes, then
okay. All right.
But if it doesn't, if it takes more than 5 or 10 minutes, then just
drop it.
Right, because you can see it, right? We can see it's not a you can't tell them there. It's you have to squint to tell they're there.
And also, just doesn't look that professional.
I'm just confirming. Is that the nature of the issue?
Yes, that is the nature of the issue that I have seen. Yes,
presentation. But I still think I got through law school because all my essays looked really good. And the content was average. So when things look good, it does.
That is a point. That is a point. Since this is the first time the clerks will be getting
and
stuff,
we want to make it
look nice.
That's what I was thinking. Is we want to make a good impression.
That makes it more important, I think, to me. And then if the person also is doing do we have a font size convention then?
10.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then if we wanted to go ahead and update that would get rid of those really gaudy looking big.
Yeah. In the last page too.
So let's just do that then.
Okay.
Even when you fill out this is the one that I downloaded.
Okay.
It's like huge. I mean.
Yeah.
Sure. Compared to like normal text.
Yeah,
anyway.
It should look consistent.
But yeah, just don't change the court one yet until we figure out how to make the names shorter. Because I think we do have to figure that out.
Okay.
We can't leave off the information, but like we don't have to say such and such division, Boston Municipal Court. We could probably just say BMC or something like that. And for the housing court sessions, it's harder. But we can't.
Okay.
We can't just directly change those.
Is it possible that
I'm conscious of everyone's time? Since this isn't a thing we're going to solve right now, maybe this is not an MVP discussion.
I think you can change everything other than that one thing, which is the
I think Michelle maybe had another thing you were going to bring up.
That's okay. I don't. No, it's not this kind of thing.
All right.
Right. Well, I'll let you know when I've made that pull request. Well, I'll tag you in it, Quentin.
Okay.
Or
well, yeah, I don't even have to review it. It can be probably David would be a good person to review it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Review it.
I won't tag.
And then the main thing is we just want to make sure that we didn't break any of the field names. So.
Yeah, and then so we will put it through testing again. That's
exactly.
what the testers are there for.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So.
Okay. Anything else? Paige, Caroline.
The choices about different things in the 209A. We were going to talk about about setting up criteria or a methodology for saying this is enough. Like there are things, the way that I get a little bit frustrated because there are times when I go, okay, right, not for the MVP. And there are times where I go how do I get past this? And things that I think really are critical to a person being able to fill out the form. It's going to be with advocates first. So that's better. And I forget that part. So that's okay. But like shutting off ideas, I don't know. If this is for advocates and we're going to change it before it goes out to pro se users, then I'm okay. If it goes out this way to pro se users, I'm going to
I think it's the former right now.
Yeah.
Because we're not.
I understand right now. It's just
no, but so for this, for the private beta.
Yep.
The MVP for the private beta is aimed at the advocates. And so if the concern is the do no harm aspect of the MVP, the hurdle we have the hurdle we have to clear, we only have to clear it with the advocates at this point. We will not, because we are since we were private beta, we are actively soliciting feedback from the advocates, and we'll incorporate that before we do a public beta.
Okay. All right.
I think we
If
also
it's
will
do no
not
harm, then it's an MVP.
release,
That's
we
fine.
won't reach consensus on all these issues, right? So
No.
for usability things,
Yeah,
even I think there's some
it's
serious
true.
usability issues we can't overcome,
It's
that we
true.
can't leave.
Okay.
And we also, can I just finish? You're interrupting me. So there are also going to be things that this is better than someone trying to fill the form out on their own, for sure. And if we hold up on trying to get the UX perfect, then no one will be able to use it at all. And that's much more serious than someone being confused on a screen and having to take time to figure it out.
Sure.
So we can derail things by having constant revisions. That's what I'm worried about.
I agree. And that's why I said there are some times where I go, okay, this is MVP. I'm going to shut up about it for now until Quentin brings it up again. Sorry, that's a big
But
view.
I think the point is we won't always agree what those are.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
sure.
and we might need a process to figure out when those are the case. But I think a rule of thumb should be, if it's a usability thing, it can't be a blocker for us getting this in people's hands.
Yes, I understand. There are some usability things that really choke people off. I
don't think you're agreeing with me, which is okay. We don't have to agree about that.
Yep.
But I think that is the rule we have to adopt.
I think usability can be just as, all right, we don't have
It's
to
compared to a
Yeah.
form people can't get from the court. They have to wait outside and have someone hand them a stack of papers to fill out right now.
Sure.
Or they
So
may not even be able to access it at all.
Just to put a point on this, let me tell you, I think Kate knows this story, but last week, I heard tale of a victim who was directed to a court. She arrived at the court. There was the phone number there for them to call the clerk to get stuff, and waited for 3 hours before she was able for the court to just deliver her a paper packet of the forms. And then they didn't really provide any assistance for her. They just gave her the forms. So if we think about that as the thing we're measuring against, I just want to
keep that in mind.
Right. I represented a client this morning in a 10-day hearing. That she did her affidavit on her own. Her affidavit was 8 words. She has 5 minor children that she didn't list anywhere on the restraining order, so no orders were made with regard to the children.
Okay.
I'm also just conscious, I think, just in terms of language, is that I think we shouldn't refer to DV survivors as victims. I'm just very conscious of that.
Oh yeah, no,
I think they're survivors, right?
Yeah.
I think there's different perspectives on that.
Yeah, there are.
I know.
So
I just makes me
I'm doing that now because I've been talking with a lot of people with that language. So this is where we aren't going to get to consensus.
No, I know. I just thought
coming from a defense background, I wouldn't even call them victims. I'd call them alleged victims.
What would you call them? Plaintiffs?
Plaintiffs.
Alleged victims.
Domestic violence plaintiffs. I know we're not going to reach consensus, but yeah, there's different views on it.
That being said, I want to just reiterate that we have deputized Kate as a subject matter expert in this area as the czar. Because she is actually in the trenches dealing with people who are dealing with this.
Right.
So I think that Michelle and Quentin both articulated things. I think Quentin's right that you're not agreeing. I agree
that we're not agreeing.
Okay, we agree that we don't agree.
Yeah.
I agree with Quentin because of the fact that no form is always going to be worse. I mean, I guess you could, I understand there's an argument you could do a danger with a form.
Right.
The point is,
that's the MVP, is that
we need to let people finish talking though.
Yeah. So the point is, Quentin's point is very well taken, and I agree with it, that if we're talking about a usability issue where what is going to happen, the result is that it will be a funneling process that makes some people not be able to participate. The fact that anyone can still get through is still better. Now, in the situation where it was something where the consequence would be they do something such that then they lose a right of access or something, that's a different question.
Right.
I think I'm understanding.
Yeah,
okay.
But I think in 99% of user interface issues, it's going to be the former as opposed to the latter.
I think I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Well that's good.
100%.
But again, I think I don't want to say I defer to Kate, but we have deputized her, and she is the one closest to this. So her
Yep.
I will say
I
it's
hear that.
really, really inaccessible right
I
now.
hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. That's
Okay.
fair.
So
The regular thing is inaccessible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't.
it's really
Okay, so-
hard for people without help
Are you
now.
talking about?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about our project. I was like,
No. Restraining orders
No.
right now
Okay.
are really inaccessible to
Yeah.
pro se people.
So it's not hard to do something better than the status quo, because the status quo is crap.
Mhm.
That being said, I think we only cleared up this one instance. I don't think we addressed the more the thing that's going to keep coming up with this over and over again, because we will on additional issues we will continue to do this. So I just want to open up what we think about that. What we had tried to do was to, even though we've been operating as a flat hierarchy, we tried to make Kate the czar. I mean, to some extent, we want to internalize sort of what we think the priorities are, because sometimes then we'll decide we want to voice or don't want to voice. But the question is, when we do voice, what is that process? And how do we reach again, I don't like the word consensus because it's not everyone agreeing. How do we reach a decision? And that was explicitly one of the reasons why we created the czar role. So maybe we need to revisit that if it's not working as intended. I'll be quiet now.
I think, I mean, I personally see like usability testing as the thing that I will find at all convincing, like actually, with users. So that is part of the problem, I think.
Yeah.
But I also, like, if Kate wants to take a hand in it and say, okay, now I'm calling it here, then I think I will be able to do that. But I mean, or, whoever it is, I think the person who wrote it shouldn't be the person to do that, including if I write it or whatever. That I think is also fairly important. But if there is a person that goes, I will watch out for these, and or people can bring them to me, and then I will make that decision. That could also work,
Oh yeah, I think this gets back to something that we talked about quite a while ago, which is having a language czar. But I don't know if all of these are language issues, so maybe it has to be
they're
brought
not
in
all
a bit.
language issues, unfortunately.
So
Yeah.
it might be freeing if we say, the problem is figuring out where's the threshold for this is a usability issue that should prevent release versus this is better than not having this form at all.
What if
And I agree there are usability issues that are going to be so important that we can't release it. I just think that threshold has to be set really, really low.
Okay.
for MVP, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was because right now we have a situation where people can't access any of these forms, really.
That's
Right?
pretty big
I feel
usability
like I'm being lectured to a bit, and I've already agreed to let
I'm
it
not
go.
trying to convince you personally
Okay.
with this. I'm just saying what my
right.
perspective is on it. It's not
You
trying
know,
to convince you.
What if I mean, we're talking, one of the things we were going to talk about, not in stand-up, but this whole idea of phase 2, and I think we've kind of let go. We were going to work on a language, a style guide.
Yeah.
It makes sense that in parallel we work on a usability guide. We'll have standards, and we work on this usability guide that is not all language, but that's part of your style or your usability elements, and then that can be a goal that we work on, and then we'll be consistent and those kinds of things as we move forward.
I suspect there are still decisions in there that are not going to be, that a guide is not going to be sufficient for. They're just,
Well, we can
there
deal with
are,
those when we come to them, right? I mean,
this is right. This is like one of them that we're coming to. That's what I'm saying. Like,
So-
right.
Well, I don't want to lose
But-
track of Caroline's idea. I think that is a good one that we hadn't
Yeah, I do
written
think we
down
should
anywhere.
do that anyway.
So I think that's
yeah,
a good idea.
for sure.
Yeah, I think
But I'm fine. Like,
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
Michelle,
Just
I
to be
don't.
clear, Michelle,
We're not. This is not a discussion of everyone against you. I think we have to discuss
Okay.
this. So don't tell us you're fine, because I think we have to flesh all of
Okay.
these ideas out to all come to figure out what we can
Okay.
do, regardless of how we each feel about it. What are we deciding to do, and what do we need to change?
Just to be clear on the framing right now, the discussion we're having now is sort of we're moving into sort of the phase 2 discussion.
Okay.
I think we've addressed, there was a particular issue we addressed. I think now we're having the larger conversation where it's how do we learn from that issue about the things that we know are going to come up in the future? And I think Quentin articulated it well there. This is sort of that larger conversation. I also really liked Caroline's suggestion, but I think Michelle's right that suggestion isn't going to, that only solves it after we've codified what the things are. So we're just trying to figure out how do we get to that codification. Does that sound right to folks?
Okay, yeah.
Kate, I'd like to hear more from you about sort of, because we've invoked the czar's name.
From Kate? Yeah.
From me?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, Kate.
so.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I feel like there's been a lot of discussions. What specifically?
Well, just that. So we've been talking about like how do we come to agreement on these hard problems when like hard problems come up.
Right.
And the question is like, what do you see your role as? Because I do think you have a special role here with the 209A. And what do you see that as? And what can we do to help you do what you need to do? And even if that's like, I can't do this, I need someone else to make this decision. What is it that?
I mean, I've been trying to, when things come up that are in question, I've been trying to like have them discussed on Slack or GitHub, tagging the people that I know have thoughts, which is mostly Caroline, Quentin, and me are I think the ones with the most thoughts.
But you go to Laura. You go to
Laura on some things. Yeah, I go to Laura on like things that I'm like, oh, this is like big. Like, what does Laura think? Because Laura's kind of the supreme czar.
Yeah.
The offhand supreme czar.
Supreme source of all knowledge, I think we called her.
She is, yeah.
And Jamie as well, when you can get it. Right.
Yeah, and Jamie, like, I think having like those two is like really helpful. I mean, I think it's been good to try to put the issues on Slack. Something I've been trying to like say, like, here's my suggestion, and then open to discussion. And I feel like we've reached consensus on things. Like
I think language things, I don't know, from the outside, the process of language questions seems to be like legal language. That is this accurate, etc.
Right. I think maybe there should be I think the language stuff, maybe there should be a separate language czar, like Caroline on like, but it's hard because the substance runs into plain language, and sometimes the two aren't totally the same. But I think when we have like discussed it and resolved, like we've reached an answer in all the cases.
Sometimes the problem is language differences between us because we're actually saying the same thing.
Right.
And when we go back and forth, we're like, yes, that's exactly what I meant. So we're usually on the same page. We don't just always express it well. Yeah.
And I think like whatever you do, you think it's the most important thing. Like I obviously think like, oh, everything 100% legal accuracy. Like, no, don't change that word. And then Caroline has like a much plainer way of saying it that's like actually better. Like, I think it's hard to get out of your perspective of what like that. But so I think like maybe having a separate formal, this is the plain language czar. I don't know.
Is there any chance that we can put this on usability testing? That we can put this on usability with people, right? Because that's really the thing that I find most convincing.
I think we will do that, Michelle. I think one of the things that we're doing when we I mean, it's not your official focus group. I mean, we can definitely do that. But I think this, what do you call it, beta? What do you call it, primary beta?
Private beta.
Private beta. So when we do this, a lot of times DV advocates are going to be sitting with people, but some people are going to be doing this on their own. And you're not necessarily having
there are people doing it on their own?
There will, because you'll have a DV advocate there, and you might have one or two people physically there in the shelter, or they might be doing it over the phone. But you will have, oftentimes you'll have the survivor plaintiff filling out the form on her own with support from a DV advocate. And DV advocates are pretty good. And the other side of this is DV advocates are trained, unlike many attorneys, to sit on their hands and let the plaintiff fill this out as much as she can, because the theme is empowering advocates. So they're coming not from a usability expert perspective. They're coming from, let this person do as much as they can on their own, because they've had
That's good to know.
not had control over their lives, and they need all the control they can get. So in a way, you're getting it differently, and the DV advocates are very good about saying this is what somebody struggled with, you know, and knowing when to step in, and most of the time stay back.
Okay, that's really good to know. That's a really great piece of information to know.
And, yeah, and also
Yeah, sorry.
just to be, oh no, the timing is so hard with this because of the delay. To sort of echo and build upon Caroline's point, like we explicitly during the private beta want to get it into advocates' hands who will then use it with folks, and then we can have explicit focus group meetings afterwards with those advocates who will be able to, as Caroline said, report back from their users. So that that is explicitly something that I think we intended to do.
Yeah, and we have about 32 DV survivors who've already, they're not getting their restraining orders now unless they're getting them extended, but we have 32 survivors who have been waiting for years to come back and test this again. And
that is very helpful.
And there's like 3 programs that organized it. So we have these women waiting, and they are diverse. And so when we're ready, we can work with them when we get to that point.
That is a super helpful.
That sounds great. Yeah,
and we're going to pay them also.
Nice.
That's
freaking amazing.
Okay, that is all wonderful information.
I still think it's really important to have a usability. Like, I feel like I say, can we have, you know, usability people involved in this? And the answer is, sure, we're going to do it ourselves. Like, people say yes,
no,
and then all the plans go, okay. So I just don't hear that in it, and maybe that's the problem. One of the frustrations I'm experiencing.
So I have an idea which might help let go a little bit of this, which is maybe we can label how finished the form is. We had this idea of skateboard versus Ferrari, right? And maybe we need to label the forms that we think this is better than nothing that way, so people can let go a little bit on that.
Maybe.
I think we have to get more forms to that stage where this is ready to go, even if it's not perfect, rather than getting all of the forms perfect. Because I think we can become paralyzed there. Because there's never an end. I've worked on many form projects. There's never an end to a form. Is just published. It's never done. It's just published.
I just do want to have, like, we say MVP. So I've seen a lot of projects have MVP that stays, that never gets beyond MVP.
Yeah. That might be what happens with a lot of the forms. But I think that's still better than having one form. It's better to have 10 forms that are MVPs.
Yeah.
Well, at some point we stop calling them MVPs then, and we just say this is released, because I don't want.
So maybe it's not a MVP versus done thing. It's a, this is done and it's at this level of finishing and polish, but it's done. I mean, that's, I think, the skateboard. Maybe we need 3 levels of marker or something. I don't know if that's too complicated, but so if we at least internally think of it that way, I think that would be helpful.
I think if I get a graphic, I'll be able to, for me personally, if I can sketch up a graphic or something and be like, just have that to look at whenever I'm getting frustrated, maybe that'll help me. I don't know. I don't know about other people.
Yeah. I don't think we can lose track of user testing and getting things perfect, but
I don't think we need to, nothing, like you said, nothing's ever perfect, and I never expect it to be. Like, that's, to me, that's not how I see the things that I don't think that, I think there are disagreements, but I think that the people who bring up concerns, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, they're not saying this needs to be perfect. They're saying this needs to be reasonable, right? So it's not, you can't say things can't be perfect, Because I don't think that's what's in people's heads. I don't think they're thinking this isn't perfect. They're thinking this isn't really usable the way it is.
Well, I'm really trying to focus forward, not trying to revisit past
no, I'm not.
discussions.
No. I'm just saying that, like, in the future, when I think about a thing and I see it, I'm not going like, oh my gosh, this isn't perfect. It has to be made perfect. So saying it doesn't have to be perfect doesn't help me in my decision making about what I bring up or don't bring up. That concept by itself is not sufficient to inform me about my decision to speak up about something or to let something lie. So if we can find a different thing to say that kind of is more useful in holding up a measuring stick about, you know, when to push for something, then that might be more useful than saying, you know, things can't be perfect. I totally agree things can't be perfect. It just, you know, there needs to be a measuring stick.
Can I say some?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think I can feel what Michelle is expressing.
Okay, yeah.
At my prior job, when I was working as a programmer, I saw a lot of scenarios in that situation. What we were doing was we understand that, well, in a perfect world, when there's no restrictions on the resource or time or anything, then we can make everything as good as we want. But that's not practical. So practically, the client says, I want this thing by this time. So that's the basic measuring stick. So what we handle that expectation, we say, yes, we can meet that date, but given all the other conditions, we can only deliver 85% of what you want. And then we're going to give you a phase 2 release, which will address the rest of it. In most of the cases, that works out because they really want something that works for a majority of cases. And that's good enough for them, even though they understand when they get phase 1 release, some of the cases will not work out. They say, okay, fine, we will deal it separately. So that's how we do it. Use that as an example. I'm thinking in our case here, it's probably also considering, okay, what's the urgency here? Is the time, let's say, by that time we really want to get the forms out so that some people can use it. If that's really important, and then we say, here's the measuring stick number 1. And if you pass this, we let it go for phase 1 release. Then we work on the rest of it, give another date, give another check, you know, things like that. That's just my perspective.
Yeah, I think what this is identifying for me is that the measuring stick of not perfect isn't a useful one for me, and it's one that I find frustrating. So,
right, so
if we can find a different if we can find a way to say this is 50% done and that is what we are calling sufficient, right? If I can look at a thing and I can say this is what 50% done means, right? Then I think I will have an easier, I personally, this doesn't say for everyone, so maybe other people have different experiences, but I do want to stop saying this can't be perfect, because that is not what I am conceiving of when I bring something up.
Right, I think it needs to be concrete. It needs to be concrete,
metric.
and also probably it will be case by case. For example, I'm just thinking out. Let's say, Michelle, you're having people testing a form, and you found some issues, and you say, here are the issues, and I wanted to know which of these ones you want to be fixed for this first phase release. Which of these ones you think we can let go? and that then the standard will be determined in that moment. So it will be very specific. You don't have to judge from abstract.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Lily, thank you for that. I think the concrete
Thank you, Lily.
part is a good
Yeah.
is a good anchor for us. So thinking about being concrete, sort of three questions. Do we think we would be benefited by imposing a constraint, like Lily explained, around a deadline? Like, do we just need to say we have certain deadlines and this is what we can do by this time? I'm just bringing it as a question. I can see Caroline saying no. The other,
Well,
okay, so just three
sorry.
things.
Sorry. I didn't hear
That's
it.
fine.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So do we think that deadlines are something we need to think about? Two, is this really about, is the thing that we want concreteness around the threshold, recognizing that maybe there's some fuzziness around different people's interpretation? Or is it that we want certainty in a decision? In which case then maybe it doesn't matter as much about agreement, right? So we just need to have a clear structure by which a decision is made. And then third, Maeve had been a little quiet, and I wanted to know if she wanted to be the first to sort of respond to any of these.
I'm sorry, what was the question? No.
No.
That's like a cool on class.
Maeve, that was cruel. All right, go ahead.
It's just, I found it so funny when what's his name, Wolfgang called on in the queue, what's the two, and it was so funny.
Oh, Jeff, when somebody
Jeff.
said Jeff, yeah, and he was like,
Yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, I didn't actually do the homework.
It just reminds me of like the
one of the
Socratic
TV
method.
experts who's been around forever, you know.
Yeah, he was cool. So I think that it's a lot to consider, but deadlines for me are they do seem like they work well. I know that they can be like a shifting goalpost, but if we say to ourselves, this is our punch list, this is what needs to get done by X date, and we have a goal to work towards, because at the moment it's been like a moving thing, and the goal has been the product, not a date. It obviously everyone works differently, and that's just how I work. I prefer deadlines, but that's my 2 cents. I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah. If I can, there's a part that I'm deadlines. I will talk about that some other time. But right, there's a part that you said, we need this by this deadline. It's this that I'm more interested in than the deadline part, right? Like, I have my problems with deadlines, but whatever. It's this that I want the definition of, right? So if we can find a way to capture that I think would be, like Lily said, make it concrete. That is the part that would be more helpful to me, I think. We won't know until we try it. And I think it's also hard to define. I think, some kind of phrase plus a graphic that I can try to make for myself, if we can identify it, could be useful if we're looking for how to practically implement this, right? But it is this that's the key.
I think
the second.
Well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, but I don't. I'll just keep going. Sorry, just to have someone. When we started this project, our vision was we're going to reproduce PDFs, but that you can send to the court. So that might be helpful as framing what is the thing that we're trying to produce. And our secondary goal was we're going to produce these PDFs in a way that we have laid the groundwork for us to go back in later and turn them each into a full-fledged document assembly application, not just a fillable PDF. I think that's something we have to return to a little bit when we think of what is the thing that is releasable. I think the 209A is different because of the dangers that are really real when people don't use it correctly. But I think it's still important to remember, even for this form.
Yeah, I feel like the 209A has been a very poor exemplar because it is a really sui generis situation. So I think that's a very good observation, Quentin. Thank you.
I think that has a lot of merit. I think the idea of it's a thing that could be improved later, for me, doesn't hold a lot of like power, because of the fact that it's likely that we won't be able to go back into a lot of this. And so it has to be a place where we can accept what's gone out, right? And which is a thing. I don't remember what the first point was. The creation, we're creating a PDF that can be submitted online. We have, I can wait till Quentin's done though, because like it's directly addressing what he's saying. So
okay.
I don't wanna.
We can wait for that. That's fine.
I think this has been I think this has so far been a really great discussion though. And I think it's, for me at least, I feel like sometimes I'm wasting everyone's time on going over this kind of stuff, but apparently I can't let it go. Okay.
I really appreciate it. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, remember our conversation a while back when we had the conversation with Matt. Like the lesson we should learn from these conversations is these are good conversations to have, right? Even if it feels like you're not sure they are. I mean,
yeah.
Especially when such valuable team members bring them up. I mean, it's key. I mean, Michelle, the thing is, you've contributed so much, and unless you feel good about what we're doing, it's not. We can't go forward. I think that's important. You have to have.
And I think it's also important that I come to a place where I can compromise. I'm not a very I don't know how long you've all known me, but I'm not a super compromising person. It's a thing I'm working on a lot. And sometimes I think that I shouldn't. So, it's a balance. I appreciate us having a discussion though, and like finding the balance between those two things.
One thing that I think might be important for context, right, is to remember the vision of phase 3, right? Because we're in the shadow of that as well, right? So if the part of the concern, and I'm not sure this is entirely right, because I know it's not the articulated point you just made, but if part of the concern about not wanting to release an MVP is because in some respect, it's not really going to be an MVP because no one's going to go back and visit it, to the extent that that's a concern, some of that is out of our control because, one, we're all volunteers right now and we don't know what infrastructure will remain beyond us. But it is an articulated point of the vision in phase 3 that what we do is we find a home for the work we've done. And that might be the Court Service Center or some other agency that then we'll be able to explicitly take on the job of continual improvement. So I just hold that out there to do two things. One, to say like, yes, it may be that we just produce an MVP and that's all we get out the door in phase 2. And it may be that phase 3 never happens. Maybe we don't find a home, but we still would have helped people. And then also with phase 3, if we can find a home, then phase 3 actually will build upon that work. And that's something that I'm really dedicated to doing, is to find a home for us in phase 3. But that's just
one
something
thing
to say.
One thing that maybe you didn't, I was just talking with a neighbor, sorry.
Yeah, we paused our conversation so we could.
We actually, I wanted to talk about,
that.
I wanted to talk about your earlier
so we paused.
Notes.
Like how many people were you waiting
paused.
to? You're like,
we paused.
We had a nanny who was leaving and I was just talking with a neighbor at the same time. I didn't realize I was at a meeting.
So what I was going to say earlier. Okay.
Oh, well, no, just for the home part, I think maybe you already said this, David, but maybe you didn't. I'm teaching 2 classes a year right now where part of what they do is build an app. And I think it's kind of great to have something that they do go back in and flesh out the fillable PDF version of a form and turn it into something that is more useful. And a lot of work will already be done to set the specifications for the project through what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But that's,
home,
20 students a year who is a home for each form,
Yeah.
potentially.
As long as testing is going on at the same time, because, yeah.
That's part of the pedagogical value of the class that it's got to be different for each student. Some students will do a better job than others at fulfilling that part of the mission, but it is something that's explicitly expected. It's
That's
not quite
awesome.
like someone dropping. You have this experience at Code for Boston where people come in, they volunteer for a set amount of time until they lose interest. And that's not quite what we have here with these forms.
Yeah.
Yeah, students are, if the home is Suffolk, students are a captive audience.
I like that you call it a mission. Quentin.
But let's
As
not
long
lose
as
track
Mass
of.
Legal Help is around, Mass Legal Help, we would always be a home. So
So,
I mean, this is
yeah.
everybody's volunteering. I'm not really volunteering because this is my job to make sure that we get these forms into the hands of pro se's. So, and this is something I've been working on since 2004. Just like big picture. And we don't keep things updated as much as I would like, but they are always on the list, and we're always reaching out to people and trying to get stuff done. I mean, I'm not trying to say that what you're worried, that your concern, I'm not trying to dismiss your concern at all, but I think it's a priority for us. And the whole legal aid world is starting to recognize that people don't want to be educated. They want to take action to fix their problems and move on. And that's what forms do. So this is like the whole form world is a central part of what we do at Mass Legal Help.
Yeah.
And usability is my thing, apart from, that's why I was like so much about plain language and readability.
Yeah, I do appreciate those things, and I'd be really glad to see those things happen. They're not going to affect my feeling about what an MVP means and the risks that are inherent in it. But I hear y'all. I wanted to say as a just a point of to express to help clarify where I'm coming from. The metric hasn't yet been defined for me. The metric of I'm glad if the metric of a PDF online. I'm glad if that helps someone else with their conception of what is fundamental about this part of the project. But there are so many aspects of this that are added by it being online that are not about, does this equate to a fillable PDF? Because they don't, right? There's parts of it that do, and then there's parts of it that don't equate to filling the PDF. And I think that it's not completely, but parts of it are apples to oranges for me. So that doesn't quite fulfill that piece of it. But I think it does fulfill it in other areas. There are parts of the forms for which that is a useful metric, but it's not sufficient for me to get the specificity I'm looking for, just where I'm at.
I see that more as like a quality and completeness measure that is helpful about the comparison. So what would your experience be filling this out? What help would you have? What information and guidance would you be provided? What validation would there be, even to some extent? Not saying that they're the same thing, because they're not.
I understand, and for parts of the form, what I'm saying is that for parts of the form, I think that's true, and for other interactions with an online form, it doesn't have anything to do with how a PDF works. If all buttons look like links, for example, that's a very confusing form to fill out and has nothing to do with whether it's, that it doesn't have anything to do with being like a PDF or not being like a PDF. That's not what we have. I'm just trying to give that as an example of a thing that I would not view as, that I would not be helped, that metric would not help me make a decision about.
So maybe a discussion of explicit features is something where this is going, but I want to make sure that we don't lose track of your prior comments. Did you have particular responses you wanted to do in response to Quentin from earlier before we?
That was the one.
That was the particular. Okay.
Yeah, I'm covered. Thank you.
So then what about feature sets? This goes back to Lily's idea, right? Lily was effectively articulating the idea of, there are these feature sets, we can do these features, and then that really gets to the percentage, right? There are like these features and we can do 80% of them. Is that the level of, I feel funny when I say things like, is that the level of granularity you're looking for? But
no, I understand. So let me use a concrete example. And I think, I feel like this is one that I'm gonna let go because some people filling it in will be better than no people filling it in. So just be aware, I already realized that. The page before the download page, right? The download, the whole interaction at the end, to me is like very opaque. To me, that is, some people will figure it out and other people won't. I'm glad the people that will figure it out will figure it out. That is not a feature, right? The feature of being able to download it is complete. The feature of being able to send it to the court is complete, but in my mind, they are very difficult to navigate. And I'm not sure how to turn that into other than, like I was saying, literal usability testing that shows actually people are finding this easy and fine, right? Like I would be very surprised, but I've been surprised before. So, but that's why I'm saying, like, the metric to me isn't like, I don't know how we define it without having, but when the advocates try it, if they say people are finding it confusing, that or people are not finding it all confusing, that might be enough, right? So
you don't have a list of things. I mean, that would be, I don't see why we can't add that to some sort of list that we want to tap, like something we want to tap.
Sure. I'm just saying the metric for me is the testing of it with people. That feels to me like I'm not sure what other metric there could be. I'm describing what metric we could use, and that to me seems like a metric that
real user testing would be a good.
That would help reassure me about something like that.
I would say, okay, maybe it's not struggle too much over what words to use. Excuse me. When you give that example, I think it's a very good one. I see it. You may call it a feature, you may not call it a feature. And it's just need to put aside of the terminology. I'll see this item. I say, okay, how many people may be stumbling on this screen? If we say 60%, 80% cannot figure it out, then that may be something we need to resolve. But if we say 80% can figure it out, maybe 20% not figure out, then this would meet the kind of 80% for phase one kind of standard.
Sure, I like the idea of putting a concrete number on, like, but again, right now, I think what we're saying, what is becoming clear to me is that, like, if 5% of people can fill it out, that's better than no percent. That's what I'm understanding right now.
I think at this stage, and that's just because right now 0% are filling it out. I do think there's an opportunity here for, I mean, it's sort of different because we have these two different forms, like the TRO and the 209A. The 209A, we have this access to this user base that's going to be able to give us this sort of feedback. The TRO, we don't have that same sort of access. There's not going to be someone who's going to sit with folks and go through and get there. Nor can find do we have to my knowledge, a pool of folks who have done this before who can go through. One thing that I think maybe this is an adjacent point, but worth bringing up now, is that we have implemented a good amount of tracking on the site so that we could actually be able to answer some of these empirical questions about whether or not this is a stopping point, right? This is the page people drop off on.
That's another question of how we're gonna, like, sorry, I just keep on forgetting this, how we're gonna inform people about the tracking and what kind of option we're gonna give them, but that's for a separate conversation.
That is I mean, that from a legal standpoint. Yeah, from a legal standpoint.
Not from a legal standpoint. Not from a legal
I'm just saying.
Standpoint. Yep.
I'm just saying from a legal standpoint, which is the bare minimum at which you have to address it, there's that floor, right? Has been established.
Okay. Anyway, so that's not what I want to discuss right now anyway. So,
okay.
like, I think that's a totally different discussion. So,
do you think it's a totally different discussion, about how we share people, or the fact that we could get empirical answers to empirical questions?
I think it is, I think answers to empirical questions to these kinds of questions is something we need. And then the matter of how to clearly express to people the way that they are sharing their information is a different question than the fact that we do need information about who can complete it. I think that doesn't necessarily have to be the only way, and I'd love if we could graduate to a point where we're not getting that data. And if we're finding enough user data just by user testing, then I don't know that is necessary. But maybe someone like Chris could say more about like how necessary that kind of information is. So.
And for what it's worth, I think my natural inclination was with you on that as well. The reason we have the tracking is because we don't have the front end user testing, right? Like if we could pull people and give them an Amazon gift card, have them sit down and, I think that would be my preference. But our constraints are
more than that. Yep. Yeah. Totally hear it. So that's why I'm saying that's a different conversation. So, yes, having some like way, knowing that there will be a measurement of how usable, of how people are experiencing the form, knowing that we're designing for 5% as opposed to 20, 50, whatever percent. I think that will be useful to me. That is a really nice concrete metric. Thank you, Lily, for getting us to that point. So I mean that is helpful to me.
Well, I want to set the threshold a little higher because, like, for example,
no. So,
I spent the last 3 days working on changing the affidavit of care and custody, even though it worked, because we heard from almost universally of a problem that was a usability issue with it, right? So I don't think we should just count those, but they should be concrete based on what we hear from people, and then we can use our intuition about
I should rephrase. I personally, 5% will help me. It doesn't mean that that's where we're aiming.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's the metric everybody's using. 5% will help me to scale back on my expectations and my actions, because it's like setting your clock 10 minutes early, right? So.
All right. And if we wanted a more explicit, maybe this is now where I'm going to get stuck because I want to write equations out. But if we wanted to be more explicit, like we're doing an expected value measurement between now and then. It's not that 5% is a fixed. And I'm sure this is entirely clear, so I'm not even sure why, but I can't stop talking. 5% is where it be now, because we're comparing against 0%. But obviously, if the status quo is something different, then we compare against that. So we're just trying to beat whatever the status quo is. So it's not that 5% is what we're shooting for. It's that right now the status quo is so
5%
rapid.
more.
Well, 5% more might be. Yeah, I mean, I'd go as we're looking for 1% more at this point, right? The point is, like, it has to be more.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. What do people feel like? Is this now when we like break out happy hour stuff, or what's? Kate's like, yeah.
I would be good with happy hour.
I think this was super helpful. I think there's one more thing which I raised that I do want to figure out how to talk about, which is how do we get away from a point where I'm the only person producing content and there's 10 people telling me what they think about the content that I made. That is
hard. Yeah, that is a really hard place to be, Quentin.
Can you explode out more what content people are coming to you with?
Well, this is something that our goal at the beginning was, how do we spread out more people learning this skill and doing it? And maybe it was unrealistic to think but then we also had a contradictory goal, which was let's get this really complex thing out as quickly as possible, which demanded me as the most experienced developer.
Yeah.
I think we have to bias it. I would prefer to bias it more towards teaching more people skills, even if it takes longer to get stuff done. And having any time that someone says, can Quentin do this? That there's another person who's learning how to do it or can do it a little bit more. And it's not that I feel like I'm doing too many things. I just think it's buying us, because I'm able to stop and take a break. I'm not working like ridiculous hours right now. I actually think that's gotten a lot better in the last few weeks. But I do feel like it's diverted us from getting new stuff done, which I think is really important. And it's wasted momentum when we have a lot of people who wanted to learn things that haven't and could, at this point, be really far along in their skills to develop something on their own.
Sure.
So I want to see how we can address that.
I think it's partially a matter of priorities, which I think we do need to sit down and remap out. I think it's still going to be a problem, though, that you will be facing, and that people who are coding will be facing, of people saying, recode this in a different way, right? Like, I would rather there be a design team and a usability team that says, here is the design, implement this, right?
I think you're asking a different question. I don't think we're going to switch to waterfall, first of all. Like, I don't think we can do that. And I don't think that would be productive based on what our team is. But I think you're also addressing a different point than I have.
Oh,
Quentin, are you saying you want more people like making content for the current forms, or you want people working on new form, like the 209A and the TRO, or different forms?
Well,
Does that question
I
make
think
sense?
I think both. I think it would be great we've gotten a lot of forms to a point where they work, and there should be people who could go in and change them, although it might always be easier for the person who created them to change things because they understand how everything fits together. And then I also think we should be producing new stuff. There's no reason to have 10 people testing the stuff we already have versus half of those people producing new stuff that gets a little bit further along the path for being ready to release.
There's not 10
That's at least where my bias would be. Well,
there's like not enough of them to test what we have.
Hyperbole, sorry.
Sure, okay.
But even 5 people, if we have only one person who's making new stuff, I think that's the wrong amount of stuff to be making right now.
So what if we used your like teaching Tuesdays and like see who, well, there's probably people who are like, this might not get everyone, especially people who already know more, but take your teaching Tuesdays, take people who attend and say like who feels comfortable maybe giving a stab at, we could identify some of the really simple forms and say, would anyone feel comfortable starting to take a stab at these?
I like that, and I've been listening while I was pouring my son some snack. I'm entirely on board here with Quentin, and I think part of this is going to be dealt with explicitly. So I mean, this was the idea of the shift between to phase 2, because this is the way we really want to operate, is not with one person doing everything. And so we're bringing on board all these volunteers next week, who are these Suffolk volunteers, who explicitly are, I want to put in this role of, we're going to train you how to do some stuff, and then you're going to do some stuff. And yeah, that's maybe not going to be the most efficient in the near term for getting something out, but over the long term, the force multiplying effect means that, you know,
very true.
You know, so it might seem like we're going
that.
slow here now, but the force multiplier will be big. And so we really, so I'm entirely endorse and embrace the sense of moving in that direction.
And they can become TAs too. I mean, you have your students and your teaching Tuesdays, and then part of teaching Tuesday is you know, when people come questions, it's like, oh my God, I've got radio buttons, I want check boxes, how does it work? You say talk to these people, you know, that people have to talk to the TAs in the teaching Tuesday, or people graduate to a TA status. I think that would be.
So.
And this was explicitly the structure we were making for them, is that we would start the class with basically people would have questions and blockers, and we would try to get other people, the people who have already done stuff, to answer those, and then we build upon it.
When we're thinking about the sustainability of the big project, I think partly, Quentin, actually, I mean, not, I don't mean actually, but I think the difference between really good coders and amateur coders who are learning this, not in a formal computer science class, is the documentation that goes on, and what is the best way to do these things. And I noticed, Michelle looks like, I love your documentation because clearly you're thinking. This is because I'm working on your page 2. I love the way you say, what? Or let's come back to this. I mean, you have this little dialogue with yourself, but anybody can read it. It's readable, and you can come back to it and see it. And Quentin does this really nice documentation with, this is page, with your whatever they are, not asterisks, the hash signs across.
Yeah.
This is page 1, and Kendall does gorgeous documentation within and I think it would be a really good idea to include that in your Teaching Tuesdays. So every time you do it, YouTube Teaching Tuesdays, so that becomes part of people learning DocAssemble is the documenting as you're going along. And that would help us all, pick up other people's projects, update them, do whatever we need to do.
I'll put that as a card on the Trello list.
So I have like 3 things. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm not letting other people have an opportunity to talk. This is going to be a very code heavy, not a very code heavy. There's some project management in here, but some of this might be code heavy conversation. So tell me if I should step back. But one thing is to kind of go backwards in addressing things. I think it's really important that once we have figured out how to automate testing, that we make testing a huge part of the work, because otherwise we will have a pile of things that it piles up. The tests you have to write then pile up, and the reviews become much more difficult, especially with people who are new to code, or when you're working with unfamiliar code, reviewing can become frustrating, and that's a learned skill as well. So I would love if I love the idea of commenting and documentation, and I also love the idea, and I would also really appreciate if that testing could become part of that curriculum. And again, comment when you want. Another item is, and this is a little bit selfish, if I were not managing things, I could be doing some of the coding. Like yesterday evening, I got some coding, and like this morning I'm working on coding, and I really do like coding. And I've been trying to teach people in the test channel to take more kind of ownership of working collaboratively and managing themselves and managing each other. It's slow going, and maybe when we have students that are dedicated to it, if we have students that are dedicated to it, then that will be more managed. But there's a lot of things to, if we're trying to write more new things, then I could hop on that, but then I'd be worried about what's going on with the testing team and with them getting abandoned. So we would need to handle that in some way and support them in some way. If the other thing is that if what we want to do is not do that, so that new students have the opportunity to do what I would otherwise be coding, if I'm taking opportunities away from other people, then that's a bit of a conflict. So I would love if we could work out some way that I could code sometimes.
Sure. Well, I could not take over managing the tests. I'm not sure if that's the main management burden you have, but I'm thinking, one thing I was thinking of as we were talking that might be a really concrete way to solve this problem of me being the primary coder and not teaching people, is for me to take next week and not do any primary coding. And I could maybe have half of that time be, someone's working on this forum, I will work with them to try to get it as far as we can get it in a week.
Sure.
Depending on whatever their level of ability is.
Yeah.
To start out. Or
I might
knowledge,
even say 2 people. Like Even
I'm
two
not
people
saying
might-
one literal person, but I'm
Oh,
saying
I
like I'll
see.
spend half of
Okay.
my time working with people to try to make advancement on
Sure,
forms.
sure.
That is not me coding anything myself. And then I could spend the other half of it to the project management stuff, so you have a break and get back to coding. But I couldn't manage the testing. I think it wouldn't be good. It would take me too long to get up on to speed, I think, for that
Did we
part.
get
So
one
it
of
wouldn't
the
be
new-
all of
I
your
think
management stuff.
I think we actually have like a process down that is much more manageable, but Maeve can also, I can discuss it with Maeve, and also if that's not something you want to take on, then that's fine. Sure.
I also
it
want to
realistic?
make,
Sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna say, I want to make clear that I'm also available for more of this time. This is what I've been trying to figure out with the meeting Maeve and I had the other day, was just figure out what you guys are doing so that I can help replicate that and take some of whatever is appropriate off of people's plate.
Sure.
Would it be realistic that we get one of the Suffolk COVID responders? What are they called specifically?
COVID
Fellows?
response fellows,
Fellows?
yeah.
Fellows, yeah. We need to come up with this shorter. But if we get one of them and we bring them up to speed with the testing, you know, if we maybe just have a look at them and see who's keen to take on the testing, and then we could train them up and make them, you know, lead on the testing, because the testing is a very time-consuming thing. And Michelle has done a great job of getting it to a point where it's very stable now. I mean, things will change, but it's at a point where there's a flow and there's we could teach somebody to manage the testing aspect of it, you know, and reduce Michelle's time involved in that. Is that something that's realistic? I mean,
I'm trying to think about the crop of folks we have.
I did also ask you for the list, if you wouldn't mind just sending that to me, because
Yeah,
I'm scared of messaging people. I want to tailor that
oh, right,
message.
right. I'll give you the.
As the team grows, we do need project management. That is one of the needs
Yeah.
we have. So
we do have one of the volunteers that's supposed to come on soon has project management background.
is that what they want to do though?
No, I need to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, it takes a certain
Okay.
person to do what you guys have been doing.
It takes someone.
At least I know
What
it's
kind of
something
person is that,
Doing
Caroline?
what- That's not me.
No,
but
I
yeah.
mean,
on
like,
someone's resume.
I'm the most scatterbrained. I know Michelle thinks she's scatterbrained. I am.
No,
I am
you are much
scatterbrained.
more scatterbrained than me.
And
But you do wonderful work.
I do lists. I try to I am just not a detailed person, and I'm not really a good project manager. And everybody, like Lily, when Lily first met me, I had all these lists and everything. She goes, "Oh, Caroline, you're so organized." Lily, do you think I'm organized?
Much as I thought in the beginning.
Working with me is like chaos, you know. I mean, it just is. But the thing is, you know, I try, but that's not what I would do. And that's why I say it takes a certain person. Lily's great. Lily's line is, let's take a step back. Let's take a step back. You know, don't approach everything all at once. And that's what I mean by take a certain person. But again, I'm thinking at Suffolk, you have clinics, right? I mean, you do work with real, I mean, not you guys specifically, but doesn't Suffolk law have clinics where you work with litigants?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what I don't know, and this is the flip side of it, is that a lot of the lawyers that I work with treat their clients as very, they protect their clients, and they don't want to expose them to testing because they're in a crisis situation.
Yeah, we cannot do that at all. That would be
Yeah,
a
okay.
major conflicts issue.
No.
Yeah.
Major
Okay. Yeah, I
conflicts
just
issue.
thought I'd throw that out there, and then I remembered. I just thought I would. Okay. So they're not a testing pool. Never mind.
Yeah, they're not testing.
Okay.
But then there are court service centers, right? And court service centers are up for people.
We did a lot of
And we do
observational testing at Court Service Center for
There,
MAID.
you know the kinds of things that some of the usability things I have concerns over might be testable just with lower risk forms, right? Like we might be able to use some of the same phrasing. We might be able to have some of the same interactions, and test them with lower risk forms.
And maybe not real, not people's not real lives. You know,
Okay.
I learned a lot.
Pardon?
Yeah,
I
right.
interrupted you,
Any
Caroline.
user test teaches you a heck of a lot, but yeah.
Well, because we developed, Quentin developed this. My dad thought that I'd done it all. He was like, Nave, this is so good. And I'm like,
Your role is
That's what
really
my family
important, though.
says
Everyone on this
too.
team has been really important.
Yeah.
This team,
Yeah.
nothing would be happening
It would
without
not-
anyone. Like,
I
if
was just
any of
telling
us were
Dave-
gone, it would just fall apart.
With two
But
people, we did a project of like a similar scale that took like a year to year and a half, right? So, I mean, with that, we've gotten it done faster with this team is really
Much
amazing.
faster, yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I
other-
just learned very interesting stuff from him, like watching him try to navigate it. And he is relatively computer literate, and I mean, he's a high literacy level individual, and he still struggled with things that I didn't expect him to struggle with. And I was like, so that was just an interesting task to watch.
yeah.
You learn a lot.
My husband
Yeah.
struggles with everything. It makes me crazy.
I think we're still recording, Caroline.
Yes.
Oh, that's an interesting point. We are. We don't have to still be recording. That's an interesting
We
question.
might edit at this point, I guess.
Well, my question is, how far back do I go before I hit the cut on the recording, or is this
Oh,
all
gosh.
useful?
We could cut it off
I
at
think this
one,
is useful.
probably. Or, yeah.
I
Okay.
I
I
think
think
this
it's okay.
process stuff is useful. I
haven't said
think
anything
about
I think
it,
we're all
so-
being very respectful of each other. So
Yeah. So
I
does
do-
anyone?
go ahead.
I just want to
Sorry.
make sure that no one has any objection to anything that has come up until this point being included in the recording.
Only my attitude, but
Well, then you can
no.
say anything you want to redeem yourself now, and then
Perfect.
we
Yeah,
can
exactly.
move away from recording.
Well, now that I've been reminded that all right. Sorry. Yeah, I will let anyone speak up. I didn't mean to take away from the question with a joke. So any whoever has feelings about that, I think it's totally legit to
Okay.
bring up.
If we don't have any, then I'm fine to keep us recording now because we were still talking about some nice stuff. Just to let Caroline know, we have been in conversation with Sharice Perry at the Court Service Center, and their take was basically wait till we have some stuff for them to play with.
Mhm.
I think actually once we have something for them to play with, then they'd be more willing to engage.
Yeah, and there's a guy, I can't remember what his name is. He's down at Brockton. I know Therese is over all of them, and he is so ready to do this. I mean, obviously, things are different right now. You don't have people streaming into court service centers, but
Yeah.
I've worked with them on a few projects, and well, you have too, haven't you, Quentin? Haven't you done that with the?
Court Service Center, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. And the other thing I wanted to say, Michelle, is that when you worry a little bit about the MVP sitting languishing and not getting improved, Quentin has been improved. They did make a couple of years ago, right? He continues to go back and make little fixes. I mean, even now.
We're gonna make
I
it
don't
be
know for the
Quentin's
last 2
students in the
months.
future.
Pardon?
Yes, we'll make it be Quentin's students in the future.
And my students as well. So I mean, that's the other thing that but yeah, I mean, I don't want to like rehash dead horses.
Let's
that was a
not
horrible
rehash
metaphor.
that. Oh yeah, that is. That's very vivid. No, let's not rehash that one. If you want to discuss it at a separate time, I have things to say, and it doesn't denigrate anybody. It's just a matter of the. It doesn't matter, but I hear that. Thank you. Yeah, I think this has been very. I mean, the fact that we've come up with concrete metrics for me has been really helpful for me. I don't know how it's impacted other people. What were we talking about? We were talking about getting a new flow, a new set of priorities.
I think it was Maeve's suggestion that we were maybe thinking we could take one of the students and train them up on, for lack of a better word, I don't want to talk about just testing, but train them up on little areas, and then they could help, basically delegate and promote people to rise to the occasion. Right? But then not give it without the net, not say, here you are, kick them into the deep end, but say like, we're going to take you and get you to here. Which is the same thing that Quentin's saying, except in the coding aspect. So it's this, same model.
So, and I think if we can focus also on duplication of responsibility and duplication of knowledge, even in everything, project management, documentation, process, whatever it is, duplicating knowledge and skills is like really important in an effort like this that has so many different tracks going on and has people who will be growing out of it, right?
Our bus number is too low.
Yes.
Are people familiar with the concept of a bus number? Since
I
Michelle said
call
yes,
it
she
a
can
bus
explain it.
factor. All right, so the
Yeah.
bus factor it sounds very gruesome. It's even more gruesome the way I used to describe it, so just keep that in mind. But the summation of it is, if this person gets hit by a bus, how far back are we set? Like how much knowledge, how much process do they carry? How much will be destroyed if they get hit by a bus, and how much work will it take to recover? So if you have a bus factor of 1, then that is one person that knows all the things, and that is not where you want to be. So I don't want any one person to have hold of any one part of the project. I don't want I don't want anywhere to have a bus factor, ideally. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but it's a very gruesome way of putting it, but it, I think that helps people remember it, and I have a morbid sense of humor, so it really works for me.
I always explain it to people as, when I go away on paternity leave, a happy thing.
There we go.
Right? What is it that I always kept a file on my desktop when I was a Defender, which was if I'm hit by a bus or go on paternity leave, and then it had enough for people to replicate stuff.
Or I've heard it as winning the lottery is another way to say the same thing.
But if I win the lottery, I'm still doing this.
Yeah. Yep.
It works better for more boring jobs, less fulfilling jobs.
Yeah. I've used other analogies in the past and they've been too vivid for folks, so I've stopped using those.
And then if anyone, I linked to that book, The Phoenix Project. I think it's like a really fast read, which is interesting.
What is
it's
that
really
about
directed at DevOps and IT, but I think it applies to any kind of process like this. The whole point of that is it talks a lot about blockers, and blockers can be people who do everything, which might seem great, but if other people aren't learning how to do them, that's a problem. So it's about dysfunctional process is if everybody relies on one person to hold the knowledge about something or to do something. Yeah. Because then you can't be doing two things at once. That person gets pulled away and you get more emergencies than you would really if you had more people spreading out the work.
And to this kind of process question, I would love if some of us coders, and not just me and you, Quentin, because I don't want it to be a me against you. And I know I get argumentative. I know I get stubborn. So I would love other perspectives. If we could establish some guidelines, style guides, some standardizations around what we do, I would really, I think that would be great when it phases to teaching other people how to do this stuff, right? Like I would love if people, when they were coming in, were learning these specific ways of doing things that we would agree upon as an established, useful kind of collaborative methodology.
What examples are you thinking of? What kind of things? We don't have to go into a lot of detail, but what are things that we should standardize?
Well, first of all, let's take kind of a broader picture. Conventions around branches, around when branches are merged, how often you have to merge master with your branch, how you do that, like when do you check out a new branch, when do you, et cetera, right? So that's an example. Another example is where do you make mandatory blocks? When do you make separate logic blocks as opposed to keeping them together? Naming conventions. I mean, I have a list somewhere, but I mean, there are the list can go on forever. This is again where perfect is the enemy of good. But the identifying kind of key ways, or at least ways we can identify right now to make our code more consistent, is going to help us collaborate And if we can get that started from the start, then.
Well, I think that's an important idea. I think keep in mind also that this is the biggest form we're working on. And Caroline, you said this is one of the biggest forms that exists, right? That to do in Massachusetts.
That's true. And it may be that
we might not need
those.
We may not need the collaboration part as much for a lot of the forms that are going to be coming up. They might be more independent.
So
I think that's great, but I also, one more thing, which is I think what you're describing sounds a little bit like what PEP8 does for Python, which I think is something I've wanted to develop for a while anyway, or to contribute to at least for DocAssemble. So I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it should be viewed as imposing standards or even standardization. It should be more a discovery process where we contribute to it over time. And then we might pull out a few things that we say, this is the way we should do it. But we should definitely be starting to come up with ideas about things that work well and compiling those as we go along.
I think there are things that we already could identify. And I'm saying that if we could take those, right, and at least standardize those. I'm not saying we standardize everything again, right? I'm saying we take the things that we have found to be pain points and we standardize those at least, and move on from there. I don't think we're going to make a PEP8. I don't think we're going to make a 2,000 page document about whatever, but
right.
Just
that's part of what Matt's project is at Illinois Legal Aid that they're doing with Lark, New Hampshire. So it's not, we have people who might be interested in that part of the project who have been volunteers or on the fringes of being volunteers too. So,
all right, at the risk of being a parody of someone, I'm aware of everyone's time.
Yeah.
I think it's a parody of someone being a parody, actually.
Yes. Yep, it is.
Anyhow.
Yeah, Matt, I think was
would anyone object to a friendly motion to table substantive discussion?
Yeah, sure.
All right. What are people doing this weekend?
Ooh.
Anything fun?
I think I have
nothing fun
scheduled this weekend.
Kate, are you doing
hiking? Because obviously she has wild plans.
What?
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna stop the recording now. Here we go.